I was just looking through the web finding watershed maps, and interestingly enough, for Compton Creek here, you know, the defining feature of this system is the level of development in the watershed, and that's just something you're going to have to sort through. And how do we get this watershed to at least emulate a flow regime that as it used to be? And do you know the watershed? This was a fun sign I saw when I was in Latin America, right? Cuenca's watershed in Spanish. And we won't protect what we don't know kind of idea. And I found everywhere in the world, folks are really engaged in this work. It's a localization question. People are getting local again, and they want to define where they live and what defines their place in their community, and then find the amenities that they appreciate. And so it's really, ultimately, I'm trying to figure out how do we mitigate our own cerebral imperviousness first and foremost, even get to the work of the day to talk about watershed imperviousness. Right? It's a headwaters question. The headwaters of the watershed, first and foremost, is the water in your own head to start the process. And so today, you all, and this weekend, are going to be talking a lot about the Compton Creek, this Gateway Project, this earthen bottom channel, and how to begin a creative process around thinking about, is Compton Creek something that should be walled off and fenced off and razor wired off and turned our back to and we look away from? Or is it something that there's some opportunity to have multiple beneficial relationships in a way to retrofit the interface between the sort of developed landscape up here and the way that creek works? And a lot of the stuff I resonate with what Tim said, Mr. Lee was saying, about the history and the creek and crawdads and fish and toads and connecting to that living lifeline of the creek as something to be honored versus something to be put away behind walls and fences. You all know this area, so we're going to go much more into that. But I was up on the bridge this morning just looking down at this section and trying to understand this corner and the porosity between this interface in this area of the creek and how's that going to work. And I'm really interested in what you all collectively can come up with and how you think about taking a structure that looks like that and adapting its function. It's never going to go back to what it ever was, but can it function in a way that provides the services that you as a community want? Flood services or environmental services, water quality improvement services, habitat services, recreational services, economic benefit services of being something that you can be proud of, that brings folks to the area. And that usually, as far as I can tell, in working a lot with communities, and this is some stuff of groups I was working with a few months back, people getting down together and co-creating and designing together. This is really the part of the relations part of the basins of relations. Is this the human piece of the puzzle? And just, I work on lots of projects with different groups who are trying to recast a community connection with each other that really is defined in pride and place. And what does that look like? And the fun part of watershed work is you get to work with the adults and the agencies and various folks, and you also get to work with the kids. And, you know, some of us will dress up in some foam and paint it to look like a fish, if that's what it takes to get to the kindergartners. And the school piece is really great. And I'm glad to hear there's a linkage with some schools here in open space that there's a current project happening. We have OAC has a school garden teacher training program, and we do ecological literacy trainings in the Bay Area. We have a couple Los Angeles schools have actually showed up. And the kids are the best. If you can get to the kids and engage them in being ecologically literate, then, as many of the parents in the house know, you'll get a spanking if you put the wrong can in the wrong container once the kids figure out recycling, right? They're pretty sharp on this stuff. There's a wonderful book out there by a gentleman named Paul Hawken called Blessed Unrest. And it's about a global look at people all over the planet, small groups of folks doing little gestures about their community, friends of everything kind of group, friends of creeks groups, friends of pond groups, friends of estuary groups. And I think that there is a movement that's not, it's not daylighted on the radar, but people everywhere want to be part of their community and their place. And this is a group I work with called SPAWN, the Salmon Protection Watershed Network. And where I come from, we have a lot of issues with salmon and steelhead and fish up there. And that becomes a keystone species for people, like a totem. We're sort of driving around. If we could design our watershed to take care of salmon, what we will do to achieve that goal will guarantee that the way the watershed functions will be so much better for all of us as people. Because the salmon's needs are so much more tight and difficult to achieve. And so, well, I don't know what your totem species is down here, but I look forward to you all figuring it out. But pick something there that you can leverage off of. Because everybody on the planet lives in a watershed. There's no exception to it. Everybody lives in a watershed. Watersheds are just these three-dimensional areas where you have geology and uplift and erosion and weathering and mountain building and sediment and water carving and flow. And you all live in them. And how do you treat them? What does the water look like and how much of it is there when it hits the ocean? And so really that work then gets back to the headwaters of the system here. And so even though I'm a biologist, mostly what I feel like I do these days is I'm a watershed therapist. And so the question for me is, can I get into this work? Ecosystem restoration. If we're going to restore the ecosystem, it has to begin with restoring the ecosystem, which is all of us. It's a social, political, cultural, spiritual conundrum we face as people in a shared space. What's the story you believe? And how do we wish to proceed with that storyline? What do you want to emulate? How do you want the form to follow the function of your collective belief of this ecosystem as you move forward at the Compton Creek watershed level, or simply the earth and bottom channel of Compton Creek? Or pick your scale. What's the story you believe? What is this? What's going to happen in this system? What is it all a commodity, or is there a community here? Where do you want to line up on this? Is there a prophecy you believe in, or is it all just about how much profit you can see? Right? And what do you want to tell yourselves? And I know, thankfully, that there's a whole bunch of folks in your watersheds and in the greater basin that are very much trying to recast a new storyline. And coming from this area of storylines and Hollywood and movies, you've got good storytellers down here. Just bring it local and have it be a story that resonates. The woman I went to China with is named Betsy Damon. She has a great group called Keepers of the Waters. And I just appreciate this quote of hers, this idea that if water's the foundation of life, then it must be the foundation of design in the built environment. If you lead with water as the driver of design, quantity and quality, then how you develop that system to sustain the cycle of life of water, I think, again, gives us the opportunity for really coming forward with what might be true green, sustainable design, or blue building, if you will, out there. And water is just the most truthful thing going. It'll hold your feet to the fire every time. And so we just have to think it through. Every 8 months in the lower 48 states of the U.S., there's 10.9 million gallons of oil just off of parking lots that goes into our storm drains and out to the creek or the bay or the ocean, wherever it ends up. 10.9 million gallons is chosen as a number because that's how much oil Exxon Valdez spilled. Remember that big spill up in Alaska there? So every 8 months there's an Exxon Valdez oil spill in the lower 48 states of the U.S. just from parking lots. Interesting conundrum, right? That's just data.